All right, we are going to bring in the man, Zach Berman from, I believe he's back home now, or are you still down at NovaCare, Zach?
No, I'm still at NovaCare. I have the locker room in Jalen Hurts later today, so here throughout the day.
All right, well, why don't you give us the ZB notes on today's press conference? Obviously, Nick had a lot to talk about, Zach. We were just talking about it. You could talk endlessly about the strategic aspect of Monday night's loss and the coach's philosophy. And Rich and I were talking about in 2017, you won the Super Bowl in part because Doug Peterson was always aggressive and never took his foot off the gas. What did Nick Sirianni have to say today?
Yeah, this was Nick's first time speaking since postgame. So a lot of the questions were about the decisions after the game, and those who watched. I should say the decisions at the end of the game, and those who watched the PHLY Eagles show yesterday. You saw Professor Selman outline why going from 3 to 6 was not the right move, at least from a data perspective. And Nick Sirianni said that he has more conviction in it today than he did when he made it. He spent the day looking at his decisions. He referenced teams around the league who have gone for the 4th and 3 or for a similar type of situation when the score is, between, I think, 2 and 5 or thereabouts. I need to look at that specifically. Basically, when you would go into a situation where you don't make it a 2-score game. And he felt strongly in the decision that he made. I still disagree with him, but that was kind of the logic behind it. Now, I asked him specifically, what did the chart tell you? And he said his chart said to go for it, meaning like his personal decision was to go for it. He said you can find online 20 different charts that tell you otherwise, but he kind of has to go with his experience. He talked about being an offensive coach and needing to go the length of the field for a touchdown, what that does compared to having to go for a field goal. So look, he's the head coach. This is his prerogative. I found that answer to be curious for this reason. As you guys well know, Jeffrey Lurie is analytically declined. Analytically inclined.
Yeah.
Inclined, not declined. Inclined. I'm still catching up from sleep from Monday night.
Tell me about it,
man. So yeah, analytically inclined. So the fact that that they did not go with what the data suggested in a critical moment, I found to be surprising.
Zach, this was kind of it felt like a little bit of a shorter, more of a throwaway question, but I thought it was interesting that he said that there was no analytical suggestion for whether to run or pass on 3rd down. And like, look, on the one hand, I feel bad for Nick in that, like, Saquon, just catch the ball. Like, just please catch the ball. But on the other hand, like, if you are going to be willing to kick, then you should run it, right? Like, if you're going to be willing to make them go the whole field, right? I don't know. It just, that bothered me a little bit too.
Yeah. So that part I get, like the chart's not giving you play call suggestions as much as it is giving, go for it or not. But there
Red
is
light, green light.
There is big picture thinking as far as running or passing. And, certainly there's data that would tell you, the probability of them scoring within 50 seconds compared to a minute and a half or what it might be. So yeah, to your point there, if you're going to kick the field goal, then and you're going to make them drive the length of the field, then you certainly want less time on the clock for them to do so.
Zach, did he get into this was something that became more of a kind of thorn in my side the more I digest the game. When they got the first down to Dallas Goedert, ESPN, Next Gen Stats gave them a 42.1% chance to win the game at that point. That interception, I know Devontae, Nick said today he slipped some and there was a couple issues. That was a worse and worse decision the more and more I thought about it. You have 2 timeouts remaining. Was there any talk about just throwing the ball away, being a little bit headier? I know he's trying to play hero ball there, but that was a brutal decision by Jalen there.
Yeah, I'm no, to answer your question, Nick did not discuss that specifically today. but that's a worthwhile discussion point. And it's something that I brought up on the show yesterday in that I don't think that got enough attention, that they still had a good chance of winning the game. And you saw the interception against Seattle last year. Not the same situation, but similar situation, right? Like there's two things you don't do if you're Jalen Hurts in that spot. You don't take a sack and you don't throw the ball to the other team, right? At that point, there were still 34 seconds on the clock. They still had one timeout. They needed about 15 seconds to go, or I'm sorry, they needed about 15 yards to go. So I found that to be a bad error by Jalen Hurts that kind of got overshadowed by what happened in the previous minute and a half.
Understandably so too, because there were a lot of other places to blame, but it really did sink in. Like, man, he should have done better there. That was a needless throw. Okay, ZB, I did see that Nick got asked a lot about the defense and other areas. Yeah. I'll just frame it this way: was there anything that he said that stuck out to you besides the clock management discussion for about 7 minutes there?
I thought the clock management was the most interesting part of it. Now, with the defense, he talked about how they can improve their run defense as far as getting off blocks, right? And that's a key component of it. He expressed confidence in the coaching staff and the defensive coaching staff, and then and there was a lot of talk about the Saints, or some talk about the Saints, the way that Saints offense is playing right now. But no, I found the most interesting parts of the press conference was, I wouldn't even say relitigating, explaining what happened at the end of that game.
Yeah, I guess he wasn't into specifics about the defensive line. I guess that'll come with Fangio tomorrow. I'm really fascinated to see what kind of changes come there, Zach. The more and more, great work we see from Fran Duffy. By the way, his film article is up on all PHLY. Check that out. And others. I mean, Bryce Huff looks like he's borderline unplayable right now. So I'd really like to hear more from Vic. I'm sure Nick's not going to dive into that, but this defensive line is an issue.
Absolutely. And the problem is there's a lot of investment here in this offensive line being good. When you look at the draft picks that they've spent, their last 3 first-round picks before Quinyon Mitchell were defensive lineman edge rusher, right? Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Jordan Davis. Then you add in third-round picks like Milton Williams, Alex Hunt. You add in $17 million a year for Bryce Huff. You add in $12 million plus for Josh Sweat. Yeah, they need to rush the quarterback better than they do. They need to stop the run better than they do. And I think if the problem here is personnel, that's a concern, because like I said, there's a lot invested in this personnel. And
real quick on that, Zach, do you think there's a scheme versus personnel conflict?
Well, certainly there's a scheme adjustment for Bryce Huff, right? I mean, he's in a different scheme than he was with the Jets, and really the only film you had of him was with the Jets. Now, that said, I think when you look at the last drive of the game, for instance, got to have a situation for the Falcons. The Eagles did not touch Kirk Cousins, like literally did not touch him. No quarterback hits, nothing I would describe as pressure. And in that situation, I personally think, and there can be football minds who disagree with me, this is your guy beat their guy, right? I mean, it doesn't need to be you can talk about how they are on stunts in games, and I get that. But in those situations, is Hassan Reddick going to beat the opposing offensive tackle? Is Bryce Huff going to beat the opposing offensive tackle, right? And I bring up Hassan Reddick because I've seen in the past 2 years, Hassan Reddick beat the opposing offensive tackle in those situations, in late game money situations. And I did not see, and if Bryce Huff came through with a sack on Kirk Cousins there, all the talk about how he's playing, how he struggles on early downs, that goes out the window. He's here to be an impact pass rusher. And the biggest concern right now is the fact that he's not an impact pass rusher.
Yeah. It's great stuff, Zach. We'll let you go so you can get to the locker room and continue the great writing on all PHLY. And we are less than a week away from your book release. So very exciting stuff in the ZB world.
We all silly like the mayor.